When you look at yourself in the mirror, what is it that you say to yourself? What is it that you see? That was the first question asked of me by my spiritual advisor. Well, I said, people say I'm a great speaker. They say I'm a great leader. No, she interjected. When you look at yourself in the mirror, what is it that you say to yourself? What is it that you see? A bit confused as to why she had rejected my first response, I decided to give her the same answer, but using different verbiage. So I go in and I'm like, well, people say I have the potential of being a great leader. I have the potential of being a great speaker. Briaina, she said in a stern yet compassionate tone, what is it that you say to yourself? After about 5 minutes of silence, tears start to stream down my face, and I simply respond, I hate myself. After that session, I started asking myself, why is it that all of the things that other people find remarkable in me are invisible to me? It wouldn't be until about a month later that I learned that there was a term associated with how I had been feeling, and that term is Impostor Syndrome. In a study by Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes titled The Imposter Phenomenon in High-Achieving Women, they define imposter syndrome as an internal feeling of intellectual phoniness, where, despite professional and academic accomplishments, one still feels as if they are not bright and that they fooled anyone who thinks otherwise. I remember before learning out about the word imposter syndrome, the word I would use to describe my feelings was poser. And I would always say, I feel like I do a good job living up to their beliefs, knowing that I don't truly live up to their beliefs. So when I first found out about imposter syndrome, I was legit consumed with research because I started to see that it affected highly accomplished people, both men and women, young and old, professionals, students, business owners, even famous people. Imposter syndrome does not discriminate. Now, earlier studies mainly focus on the impact in women, but we're starting to see that men are experiencing imposter syndrome as well. However, women of color, especially Black women, as well as the LGBTQ communities, continue to experience it at a higher rate. Because when you've dealt with systemic oppression, or you've been told directly or indirectly your entire life that you are less than, then it's difficult not to doubt your skills and abilities despite noted success. As a Black woman, I experienced this twofold because I'm not only battling with feelings of fraud from being an imposter, but I really am a fraud. And it has nothing to do with my skills and abilities. It's because for 40 hours out of the week, I can't be my authentic self at work. Even then, I still didn't feel a sense of normalcy until I read an article by the Journal of Behavioral Science, because the article estimated that nearly 70% of individuals will experience at least one episode of imposter syndrome in their lifetime. And though those episodes can manifest themselves in several different ways, today I want to speak on 3. And those 3 are the perfectionist, the superhuman, and the intellectual authentic. The perfectionists, they work super hard to ensure that their stupidity is never exposed. They strive for a 100% success rate in everything that they do, and everything from their appearance to their attitude is curated to reflect as such. And then there's the superhuman, which we all know one of these. They're the ones who say yes to everything. They accept too many assignments. And not only do they ask to be on every committee, they even offer to head those committees. The superhuman does this because it gives them a sense of job security, because they would never think that their employer has kept them on this long based off of their skills and abilities, but more so based off their inability to say no. And then there's the intellectual authentic. These are the ones where you know they have bright ideas, yet they never speak up in team meetings. In fact, they just agree with everyone else's ideas because they feel that their ideas aren't worthy to be compared to those of their peers. I'm going to share a secret with you all, because this, in fact, is where most of my imposter syndrome lies. And it lies behind 2 words. And those 2 words are bachelor's degree. Working in the field of higher education, I know you need more than a bachelor's degree to move up in the ranks. But must I feel inferior because I don't? I mean, I still took 4 years out of my life to earn a higher education. Yet, time and time again, when I converse with colleagues who don't know my educational background, I hear them make smart remarks such as, oh, well, so-and-so only has a bachelor's degree, or so-and-so is no competition for me because I have a master's degree. I remember a couple of years back when I thought that expanding my vocabulary would help with my feelings of imposterism. So I took to learning one new vocabulary word a day. After a while, I got sick of that. And I said, you know what? I'm going to let my skills, my track record, and my passion for what I do speak for me. And honestly, that's when things started to change. Because no, there's no cure for imposter syndrome, but it can be managed. Because if left unmanaged, it could not only lead to symptoms of stress, anxiety, and depression, but it could potentially yield you a smaller bank account. Because one constantly doubts their abilities, that they limit both their life and professional opportunities. And I don't know about you, but I refuse to put a cap on how much money I can make. So whenever the imposter feelings start to creep in, I do what I call a SURE check. And SURE stands for self-unbelief rooted energy. Because if my energy is rooted in unbelief, then it will always reflect through myself. So the first part of my SURE check is I call it out. Because now that I know what imposter syndrome is, I'm able to call out the lies associated with it. And it's important that we continue to talk about it because studies reveal that imposter syndrome is a big secret kept amongst those who experience it. But when shared, others find relief in knowing that they're not alone. Next, I got me a bad entourage. And entourage is just my cool way of saying support group. But my entourage not only supports and holds me accountable, but they reassure me whenever my imposter syndrome starts to kick in. I was talking to a good friend of mine, and I had shared with her that I had received an interview for TEDx. And then I went on to say, but, they're probably interviewing everyone who submitted a proposal. She stopped me dead in my tracks and said, no, ma'am, that's your imposter syndrome kicking in. You earned that interview. Then I always think, speak, and believe positively about myself. And no, this is not a motivational talk. Because the reality is, getting wins under your belt does not help with imposter syndrome. In fact, increased success intensifies the feelings of being a fraud. And the last part of my SURE check is a quote by Henry Ford that I remind myself of daily, which simply says, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. So today, I want to challenge you all to do your own SURE check and get you a sheet of paper and write down all the lies that your imposter self says to you. I want you to hold that sheet of paper up in the mirror and look yourself dead square in the eye and say, dear imposter syndrome, it's a lie for me. Thank you.